Hello my internet friends and welcome back to my channel. A few months ago I did a video on 5 signs that you might be autistic and ADHD, and I wanted to follow up on this because it seems like it resonated with a lot of people. But that video was about what it feels like on the inside, experiencing that kind of state of duality. And today I want to talk about some strategies that help me and could help you. For those of you who are new here, I am Sam and I make content about autism and ADHD from a neurodiversity affirming standpoint. Ever since my own autism diagnosis 4 years ago, and more recently realizing that I got the ADHD as well. But as it turns out, there really aren't that many resources to help us. Up until 2013, you couldn't even get a dual diagnosis of autism and ADHD. So if you had one diagnosis, you couldn't get the other diagnosis. But that, of course, doesn't mean that we didn't already exist. So the research body is obviously limited to the last 10 years, and we're only just entering the phase of people receiving both diagnoses and kind of like figuring out what it's all about. So I have a few tips today from my own experience. The danger of giving out tips online, life hacks or whatever, is that it can make you all think that I have my whole life together perfectly, and that's really not the case all the time. But I have noticed my life getting easier to manage while following these principles. So maybe they'll help you too. Number 1, appease both sides of you. If you have autism and ADHD, you must appease both sides of you. And this can be hard when you get one diagnosis first and the other one later, or maybe one is an official diagnosis and the other one is, self-identified, or even if both are self-identified. It took me a really long time to really believe that my ADHD was real, despite the fact that it was causing me problems in my day-to-day life. But at the time, it kind of seemed a bit like an add-on to my autism diagnosis, which seemed the more significant diagnosis, but that was actually not the case. I went through so much internalized ableism regarding my ADHD because I think I just picked up the stuff that I heard around me, like,
oh, it's not a real thing, it doesn't exist, it's not that bad, you're just being lazy. Everyone's like that.
There's a lot of stuff that people like to say when they have no experience of having ADHD. And, I pick up on that, and I think I really internalized that and really believed that these were my faults. But I've learned that if you don't accept either side, if you don't take each side seriously, that you really can't find any kind of a good balance in life. If you focus on your autistic accommodation and needs only, you're very likely to go through what I think some people call a bore-out, which is basically where you're bored and understimulated because you're not giving your ADHD what it needs. I don't know if bore-out is an official thing. I feel like it should be a thing. I didn't actually make up this term, by the way, but I don't know where it came from. On the other hand, if you focus on accommodating your ADHD only, you are very likely to go through an autistic burnout, where you are overstimulated and overscheduled, and life is chaotic and stressful and overwhelming because you are ignoring your basic autistic needs. So don't focus so much on one that you neglect the needs of the other. And it is so hard to get this balance right. But you can learn to recognize the signs and symptoms of autistic burnout or ADHD bore-out. Obviously, these will be slightly different for each person, but you can learn to recognize them. So for example, it's not really a surprise that my ADHD symptoms started to become a little bit more pronounced during lockdown because I was bored and understimulated. And obviously this can be mistaken for depression, but I believe it's kind of an ADHD specific version of depression. I'm making up new diagnoses now. Basically understimulation, chronic understimulation. Something that has really helped me with this kind of bore-out thing is exercise. Oh, I know, don't groan. Because as it turns out, I have actually always been physically hyperactive. But as a child, I didn't notice it because I was doing so much sports. There was a point where, when I was about 9 or something and I was training for, I was in gymnastics club, I was training 7 times a week, I was doing school sports or whatever, and I was still finding time to kind of like, be upside down on the sofa. The physical hyperactivity was less obvious. And then as you leave school, kind of like the structure fades away, you have to do things yourself. And obviously as an adult, it's very easy to not exercise as much. So I have found exercise to be really, really helpful in like getting me that stimulation, especially when I exercise with like super poppy music or like very, very rocky stuff, something that's like extremely stimulating and uplifting while I'm exercising. it's that little dose of like boom in the morning, and then the rest of the day I can be a bit more like chill and focus more on sort of like autistic stuff. Do I time block my autism and ADHD? Maybe. But I think that exercise has helped me feed, you know, the ADHD troll that lives under the bridge in my brain. Another large part of dealing with this kind of bore out is having a little bit of fun. And this can be really hard to do when you're autistic as well, because maybe socializing or whatever is hard because that environment isn't good for your autistic needs. Now, I've definitely used alcohol for this in the past when I was younger. You know, used it way too much as a coping mechanism, because the alcohol allows me to tolerate the sensory aspects of the environments where the fun was being had. So for example, you like to go clubbing. Well, I didn't really like to go clubbing, but let's say you like to go clubbing and you enjoy dancing, but having that experience, you also have to put up with a huge variety of other sensory issues. And by the way, this is not a recommendation. Do not recommend using alcohol in this way, but I know that a lot of us might do it and not actually realize that's what we're doing at the time. So finding ways to find like controlled fun, manageable fun, planned spontaneity, that kind of stuff is really important. So I've talked a lot about the ADHD bore out. Now I want to talk about autistic burnout, which I think is probably the bigger elephant in the room. I think it's more significant to understand autistic burnout or deal with that first. I know that a lot of my viewers comment and contact me saying that they've been through a burnout. A lot of people go through an autistic burnout before their diagnosis. It's generally characterized by being in a permanent state of overwhelm, feeling frazzled, hypersensitive. Everything is just too much, and even small demands are kind of sending you into meltdown on a more regular basis. And this can be a really long-term thing that kind of goes on for years if it's not addressed. And I believe this is a result of either kind of like a big event or a big kind of trigger event, or just living a life that neglects your autistic needs long-term. And when I say autistic needs, I mean appropriate rest, space, quiet, and routine. I've been through a few burnout phases in my life, typically lasting kind of like a few months before I can get myself going again. I went through one after my son was born. Obviously, parenthood really disrupts your life and disrupts your routines and kind of yoinks away your coping mechanisms. But that's kind of a different topic for another time. Now, can you be burned out and bored out at the same time? That is the question. I think from my experience, yes, you can. Despite autism and ADHD seeming to contradict each other, I think they both affect your nervous system and overall quality of life, the feeling in your body, the feeling in your brain, and a very stressful period could easily kind of attack both sides of you. This is kind of like a half-formed theory, so this is just my experience where I think that you can have both happening at the same time. But I'm really interested to know if you've kind of been through a similar, especially with the bore-out thing, at the same time as the burnout. For me, it has happened after a period of quite intense stress, or a big project that I've finished that I've overdone because I haven't planned properly because of the ADHD. And then I sort of like either the project comes to an end, or I finish, or I burn out and I stop doing things. And then that's accompanied by the sort of like bore out and apathy and kind of depression. Because everything I do then overstimulates me. I can never get the balance right. So trying to do things is too overwhelming, so that the ADHD never gets the stimulation it needs. This wasn't actually supposed to be a burnout tips video, but I do think in this situation, especially if you're on the hypersensitive side of the sensitivity spectrum, it's really important to find ways to stimulate yourself that you can control. So for example, rather than going to a club and compensating with alcohol, you are blasting loud music through your headphones, but you're doing that kind of like on a regular basis, rather than just whenever you think about it. I always forget to listen to music, but when I do, it makes me feel good. So even though I've said to appease both sides, and that is really important, I stand by that, I will say that I think that you need to be extra gentle and extra nurturing towards your autistic side. And it's a really hard thing to balance. And for me, getting on top of my weekly schedule and routines has helped me kind of like set the framework so that my autistic needs are met every week. And that's so important. And then I get to sprinkle a little spontaneity and fun on top. And yes, I do plan my spontaneity. Whew, that was a long one. Number 2. Find ways to be supported. My second tip is to find ways to be supported by others. And I know for some people it can be a bit like,
other people?
But hear me out. There is a myth that some of us live independently. Nobody lives independently. Nobody in the world lives independently unless you are literally in an isolated shack on a mountain with zero contact. And this myth of independence won't die out because we like to believe that we can do it all ourselves, but we can't. You are allowed to depend on others for help. You are allowed to pay others to help you with things that other people don't need to pay others to help you with things. So consider outsourcing things that you are A, bad at, and B, things that you can do but cost a lot of energy and mental capacity. And now I understand that for a lot of us, probably most of us, paying someone for all of these things is not actually an option. There are other ways to get this support. Consider something like task swapping with a friend. Maybe they will help you get your house organized if you help them with their taxes or something like that. You'll both have different strengths and weaknesses, and if you can try and swap that, that could work out really well and cost nothing. There's also the option of body doubling. I find I can get through my tasks, especially ones that I really hate doing but can do, if I just have somebody literally sitting there and watching me do it. I don't really understand why that makes any difference, but it does. And something that's really important for me, I think, which is probably why this works, is being able to kind of like process my thoughts aloud as I'm doing them. Talk to that person without the expectation the person will talk back other than to validate what I'm saying. But body doubling doesn't have to be in real life or talking or interacting like that. Some people find just sitting on a video call in silence with somebody when you both have tasks to get done, some people find that works really well. So that's also an option to think about. The reason getting other people to support you is so important is because I know that I have spent a lot of time and energy focusing on the things that I'm bad at, trying to improve that. And sometimes I have to admit that just isn't worth it. It's not worth your time. It's not worth your energy. If your weaknesses are related to autism, ADHD, or another neurodivergent condition, you may find ways to manage them to help you get along. But they're never going to go away because that's just how your brain works. And that's been a really hard thing for me to accept because I have a tendency to feel kind of like a failure if I'm bad at stuff. So the solution is to not be bad at stuff, right? Part of letting other people help you is releasing yourself from this self-constructed mental prison. And just think about what you could achieve, what you could do with your life if you focused on your natural strengths and talents instead of worrying about the things you're not good at and stubbornly clinging to the myth of independence. I just want to take a little break from the video to remind you that my Autistic Traits workbook is now available on Amazon for people who are in the early stages of their autistic self-discovery and need some help organizing their thoughts and memories so that it all makes sense. Maybe in preparation for assessment or maybe just to understand themselves better. It's a workbook so you can write in it, it's very colorful and pretty, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's bought the book so far and especially those who have left such nice reviews on Amazon. Now back to the video. Number 3, plan, plan, plan. Planning has become such a crucial part of keeping my whole life together, especially now that we are a family of 4. And so I really believe that it's so crucial to find a planner or planning system that works for you, whether that's paper or digital. I used to try a lot of kind of overly complicated systems. I think I even might have done videos on them a couple of years ago. But now I pretty much use 3 planning systems. I use the trusty Clever Fox journal that I've used for years to plan out my week and my month. A couple of months ago, I recently started using Notion as my main digital planner, and this has been a revelation to me. And I use Google Calendar as well, and that's kind of it. I try and keep everything on those 3 systems. Now, I personally like digital and paper. I find that the act of writing something down actually helps me kind of remember it and focus on what I need to do that week. But obviously digital has the benefit that you can access it and edit it wherever you are, whether you're on your phone or out and about or on your laptop or whatever. As part of this system, I have developed a Sunday reset routine, which helps me stay on top of things in a sustainable way. This is basically a checklist of things that you do every Sunday. Sunday makes the most sense to me, to make sure that the everyday admin stuff stays up to date and things never get too overwhelming. And if you do this, do consider including family members where appropriate. I have an ADHD husband, so we both really benefit going through the week ahead, knowing what the other one's doing, reminding each other of things that the other one needs to remember. Like most of our relationship at the moment is just reminding the other one to do stuff. And sometimes we even go through the day at the beginning of the day so that we know what we're both doing that day to kind of keep ahead of things. Now, the Sunday routine tasks are, for the most part, really boring things that I hate doing because they are boring. But planning and keeping on top of things is really important for my autistic needs. So if you're going to do this reset, it's an idea to do it in a stimulating way, you know, with like music and smelly candles and excitement, stimulation. I think it's also really important to stick to a time limit here, because otherwise you're going to feel like it's a slog, it's a marathon. And the thing is, 30 minutes should be enough if you do it every week, she says. So the Sunday reset would include 10 minutes of going through your emails. Go through anything that you've missed or need to reply to and add to your next week's to-do list or something like that. Go through junk, unsubscribe from a couple of things. If you don't get through it all, that's fine. After 10 minutes, you stop. You're done. Then the next 10 minutes, washing the dishes, loading or emptying the dishwasher, or even just clearing the sink. Just do 10 minutes of that and stop. Then I like to do a 5-minute kind of additional tidying up of the main living area. If you have kids, you'll know that tidying up is pretty much a constant thing. But after a weekend, after the week, you know, there's other stuff that needs to be put back. So generally that's the time to do that on top of the, you know, toy tidy up that happens. And the last 5 minutes is looking over your meal plan, making sure that you've got the ingredients if you do plan your meals, which I do highly recommend, but you can't do that in 5 minutes. But this is just an additional, right, what are we eating? Do I need to get anything out of the freezer for tomorrow? That kind of thing. So that's just 5 minutes there. And I do find that this setup, even though it might seem like 5 minutes here and 10 minutes here doesn't really do much, it will help you over the long term build a sustainable routine. And if you are interested, I made a nice little PDF checklist of my Sunday reset routine. You can find it in the links in the description box below. Tip number 4 is to cultivate self-compassion. My final tip is to constantly cultivate compassion towards yourself. I think the AuDHD combo especially, I think we tend to be really hard on ourselves, overly hard on ourselves, especially because we might not necessarily feel all autistic or all ADHD. And so that can lead us to think that maybe we don't have it as bad as others. But being AuDHD is its own unique challenge, and we must take the time to recognize that and acknowledge how exhausting it can be. And most importantly, allowing ourselves to be proud of the progress that we've made so far and how far we've come. But I'm very aware that saying just love yourself is not very helpful and actually not very easy to do. Journaling has been something that has helped me, although I feel like I don't have that much time to do that now, although I probably do. But rather than just writing wherever your brain wants to go or writing about things that have happened, it's a better idea to journal with this goal in mind, this goal of cultivating self-compassion. And you can find various prompts online. I literally just Googled journal prompts for self-compassion and loads of really good stuff came up, and you can pick ones that you think might be good. So some example prompts might be, what does my body need right now? What does my brain need right now? How can I do something nice for myself tomorrow? Am I giving myself an unnecessarily hard time over anything? Probably. Do I put too much pressure on myself? I think you get the idea. Just a few sentences is fine. Literally only needs to take 5 minutes or so. But getting into the habit of being kind to yourself is very powerful. If you're more into the visualization stuff, you can kind of incorporate self-compassion exercises into kind of like a mindfulness routine. It's been really helpful for me to visualize my inner child, or sort of like a younger version of myself that I feel compassion towards. And basically that allows me to view myself from the outside. And for me, it's much easier to kind of like lay the compassion onto another person than onto myself. So if I externalize myself, it kind of makes it easier for me. You know, it's this concept of you wouldn't treat your loved ones this way, so why are you treating yourself this way? And by externalizing my inner child or my younger self, I found it a lot easier to understand what I need or see when I'm just hurting, and ultimately develop more self-compassion as I integrate that into my everyday life. And I've noticed a change that by practicing being kinder to myself, it has actually allowed me to be more open and giving to others. And I don't mean giving as in a give, serve other people sort of way. I just mean that because I'm not holding on to all this hurt, I'm able to release that for other people. And I think that my friendships and relationships have benefited from that. You got this. You can do this. Don't forget your freebies down below. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and see you next time. Bye. So the research body, oh my God, the cat. Do I let her in or not? I don't know. What do you want? Yeah. So don't focus so much on one. Tip number 4 is to cultivate. If you're more into the visualization stuff. Bye, Storm.